Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Inquiry Live. Tonight, we are going to be talking about maybe something that you don't want to admit, but I want to throw it out there. Especially 2 weeks ago, I talked about why I'm not a perfect teacher and why that's okay. And I got a lot of really great response from you about how it helped listening, that it resonated with you. So I wanted to talk today about some of the things that have held me back and some of my limiting beliefs that have kind of gotten in my way. So I'm going to look at 5 things that are holding us back to becoming better teachers. So I think we all start teaching and we want to become better teachers. But the problem is we compare ourselves to those stock photos, those teachers that are standing in the front of the classroom and all of the students are sitting there with a huge smile on their face, all engaged with their hands up. And I just don't think if that's what we're comparing ourselves to, that we're really comparing ourselves to a realistic expectation. We can all be better teachers and believe that we're great teachers, but there's some things that probably are standing in our way that might also prevent us from using inquiry effectively as well. So I'm Patty, and I am the teacher blogger behind Madly Learning, and I am here on my Facebook page every single week talking about using inquiry in your classroom and sharing all of the adventures and mishaps that I have had in my classroom, so that hopefully by sharing my story, it will help you to fit it all together and make teaching with inquiry just a little bit more accessible and fun for both you and your students. So like I said, we're going to be talking tonight about the 5 things that are holding you back that will make you become and feel like you are a better teacher. And I think that some of them might be a little surprising for you. So the first one that I see is when teachers are struggling with doing something new in their classroom. And you'll see this in staff meetings or even in the staff room. You hear a new idea, and the first thing that you do is you say, oh, my students couldn't do that. Or, yeah, that might work there, but my students can't do that. Or, do you really think that that is realistic? I'm guilty of this, especially when I am presented something new. I will often have those negative limiting beliefs for myself that prevent me from moving forward and from tackling something new. So I think it's important for us as teachers to trust our students and trust ourselves and our own abilities so that we can take on new challenges and have those high expectations for our students so that we can say, my students might not be able to do it now, but I can get them there. Kind of that growth mindset for both the teacher and the student, that they might not be able to do something now, but the belief that we can get them there because we are competent and capable teachers. We've got to teach who's in front of us, and that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be our set of challenges, and what works for you isn't necessarily going to work for the teacher in the room next to you. So I think it's important to take every single new idea that you get and to incorporate it to what you're currently already doing and make slight changes along the way that help to move you forward. And I think that that is something that I have struggled with myself, is understanding that just because one teacher shares the way they do something, I don't then have to go ahead and replicate exactly what they're doing, but I need to find my own way of doing that thing that's going to fit authentically with who I am in the classroom and what kind of teacher I am. For example, when I was first presented the concept of a wonder provocation, it was in a table form. And realistically, I thought, who has time to put a table together of all of these artifacts, and who has room? Where would I fit this in my class? I had 36 students that year, and it really didn't think that was going to work for me. But having somebody say to me, well, what would that look like? How could you incorporate the big idea of that into your classroom? And I thought, well, I've got all the bulletin board space in my room. How could I take those things that are on a table and move them onto my wall? And that's kind of how I started developing the Wonder Walls that I'm currently and still using in my classroom, and something I talk a lot about through the Teaching with Inquiry live show each week here. It's about taking an idea that you're given and making it your own, and something that fits with who you've got in front of you and what you're doing. And you've got to trust that you know what's best for your students, but you can also take those risks and try new things. Another big one, and this is particular for inquiry, it's something that holds most teachers back, I think, in starting inquiry or really going full blown into inquiry. And that's the idea of losing control. Now, this is a huge one for teachers, is the idea that you are going to lose control of your classroom if you try inquiry. And I think the fear comes in as you can picture a class. And I know for me, I picture the class, maybe very first supply job that you ever had, and you're in a tough school, and you walk in and there's kids standing on desks and they're throwing things, and okay, maybe that was just my first experience as a supply, but it's chaos and mayhem. And I think that there's that fear and anxiety that gets on us and attacks us and says, if I let go of control, then it's going to be absolute chaos and I'm not going to be able to come back from that or manage that. And I think that's us taking what inquiry is, taking it to the extreme. Because inquiry is not necessarily about letting go of all control and sitting back and letting anything happen. It's about really responsibly listening to the voices of your students. It's hearing their ideas. It's allowing them time to speak and share, and then being responsive to what they say. So if they're telling you in, say, a community circle that there's something that they don't like or something they want to try, hearing that voice of theirs and then acting on it and making the voice in the classroom matter is the very first step, I think, when we're tackling trying inquiry in our classroom. As teachers, we are control freaks. Generally, we're highly planned individuals. I mean, it's part of our job to make a day plan as to what our day looks like. So it's just ingrained in us that everything must be planned down to the minutia. I mean, that's what they train us to do in Teachers College, is to make these 6-page lesson plans where we're planning out absolutely everything. But inquiry is asking you not really to come down and plan every last thing, but to be a bit more open-ended and flexible in where you might be going in a lesson and responsively listening to your students. But that doesn't mean that you're totally letting go of your classroom management. Your classroom management still has to be there. And it comes down to you setting up routines and systems that you put in place that keeps that structured. So do students know that during, science time, that when we're sitting on the carpet, we should be sitting in a circle, that we're having conversations? What does it look like? How do you listen to one another? One person speaks at a time. That control of what the conversation looks like in terms of the management, you're still in a lot of control so that inquiry can actually happen. But what you're necessarily talking about, you're allowing to yourself to go on a tangent, or you're listening to where students take the conversation and you're letting it go off on that tangent if you're comfortable doing so. And if your students are still engaged, it's finding that spark and then allowing them to go forward with it. You're not losing control in that. Just because they don't do every single thing in list order on your planner, that's way so much planning that you're spending countless hours going over in all of that detail, and you can save that time in maybe planning for your teachers, or planning for your students into different avenues that they can explore. But it's being responsive to them and conducting the 3-ring circus that sometimes happens in your classroom. Now, that does mean for a lot of us, we don't like noise in our classroom. You do have to get used to talking and noise. The level of volume goes up, but as long as you're monitoring that those conversations are conversations that are on task, that you just have to talk yourself out of that discomfort when that noise level goes up, that they are on task, they're doing what needs to be done, and they're getting through, and you can check off those learning expectations. So it's baby steps, baby steps. You do try. One of the third tip I have as to one of the things that gets in your way of being a better teacher is you try to do way too much too soon. So you try to do an independent inquiry before your students are ready. And this is where you really need to kind of pace yourself and not set it up where you absolutely have to go full blown into what it is that you're doing. You don't have to go full blown into independent inquiry. You can take it slow and do a guided inquiry and spend that time training them in the routine and the systems that you need to have in place. That's really important for down the line. Starting your unit at the beginning, there's going to be a lot more modeled and guided inquiry. And as you get to the end and students are more comfortable with the content and they understand and how you built some of that background knowledge for them, then they can start experimenting with a bit more independence and look at a variety of projects. You don't have to plan every detail when it comes down to that. You can give them a bit more freedom and choice so that you can listen to them and be more responsive. So you don't have to go straight into the independent inquiry. You've got to use all of your assessment techniques and tricks to say they're not ready for that yet, and it's okay for me to take baby steps towards this. That's where I'm going, but I don't have to be there quite yet. Number 4, and I think this is kind of, for me, this is one that holds me back a lot, and that is that you're afraid of failing or looking like a fool in your classroom because you don't know the answer. And this is just something that comes, I think, with practice of you not knowing the answer. And that's going to happen, and it's okay that you don't know the answer. We live in the age of Google. And at one point, I know when I was a kid, I thought my teachers knew everything about everything because I didn't have the accessibility to all of the information at my fingertips. And I think now it's okay for us. It's also impossible for us to know everything about everything because there's so much information out there. So it's okay for you to not know the answers to all your students' questions. You can pause on a question and not dig deeper into it and then come back the next day and reflect on it. That's okay. It's also okay to fail in front of your students and to get something wrong and use that as a learning opportunity that you also have grown your thinking and you are leading them in that direction. And you have to come at that in a very honest and professional way, not in the way that you might lose any respect with your students, that you're constantly making mistakes, but it's okay that you're making a mistake in front of your student or that you are learning things along the way, that they see you as a learner and they see that you're trying and that you might not know an answer to their question, but how do you model for them how to find that answer? And it's okay. Using a growth mindset and modeling that for your students, because those are the skills we definitely need our students to have, is grit and perseverance. So modeling that for them as well, and not letting that fear of failure hold you back into not taking risks as a teacher in your classroom. I think finally, the biggest one is worrying that you're not good enough as a teacher. And I think this is a big one that we're constantly comparing ourselves. We're comparing ourselves to that stock photo of who we should be, what our classroom's supposed to look like, what this perfect classroom is supposed to be, that every student is on task, every student is learning. And in reality, that never happens. It never happens in my room. It never happens in any classroom I've ever been in. It's never going to be stock photo perfect. And it's not like the movies. That's just not the reality. There's going to be times where you've got kids off task. There's going to be times where you have some kids doing great and some kids not doing so great. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have days where you are like, why did I put this on the lesson plan today? Today was not the day. It's okay. That's not, just because you're not that stock photo doesn't mean that you're not a great teacher. You are probably an amazing teacher. The fact that you are looking for new ideas and you're seeking new information probably leads me to believe that you're on the right path to being a great teacher. You don't need some fancy lesson to pass your TPA. I bet you're probably doing just fine every single day, that if you were ever observed on a regular Wednesday, you'd probably be doing a great job most days. And because your students are learning, they're gathering information, they're trying, you're doing a good job. And I think we're really hard on ourselves saying that, we get summers off and we've got to justify all the time we spend outside of our classroom, doing our job. It's okay. It's okay. You're doing a good job and believing that you're doing your best and you are a good teacher, I think stops us a lot of the times, because we're constantly questioning if we are good enough. And I think we have to start believing that we are, because that limiting belief that we're not good enough is probably doing something to hold us back. So those are my top 5 things that I think get in our own way from us believing that we're great teachers. We are great teachers. Our students probably love us a whole heck of a lot. They will remember us when they leave, and when they leave our rooms, we are making an imprint on our students, and that's okay. And that's great. That's our job, and they're learning from us. And I think we need to take those risks, take those steps, push the boundaries, try something new, and take those risks so that we can continue to grow and improve our practice as teachers. So that's all I have for tonight. If you would like the transcript from this episode, or to get the replay or listen to the podcast or watch the replay on YouTube, you can get links to all of that, including the show notes, at www.teachingwithinquiry.com, which is the website dedicated to this show. So if you want any of the show notes from tonight's episode or previous episode, that's where you can go. You can also get to that website straight from my regular site, which is www.madlylearning.com. If you're not sure where to start, I highly recommend that you start on my website at www.madlylearning.com, and you go ahead and click to join Inquiry 101. That is the place to start, so that you can get on the page with all of the basics that you need to start inquiry in your classroom. It's a free course that I put together, so that before you start binge watching the Teaching with Inquiry episodes, take Inquiry 101 course, and it's a great place for you to start kind of building the foundation of what it is that you need to get started with inquiry right away in your classroom. So you can access that again at www.madlylearning.com. And I hope you have a great week. I will see you next week for another episode where we will talk all about inquiry-based learning in your classroom, so that you can make inquiry-based learning teaching accessible and fun for both you and your students. Have a great week. Talk to you later.